The recess is over and the speeches are continuing, but the focus again is agricultural production, how it will help to curb insecurity. We'll take you back to the retreat now.
Nigeria's huge economic potential, the agricultural transformation agenda, the priority commodity value chains, the youth agripreneur initiatives, business innovation platforms, and my conclusion. Well, for most of you who don't know IIT has been established in Nigeria since 1967 to help smallholder farmers raise agricultural production, improve food security, and increase income in sub-Saharan Africa. And our mandate is cassava, maize, yam, soybean, banana, plantains, and cowpea. And we also work for the humid tropics, not only of Africa, but including Asia and Latin America in terms of farming systems. We have headquarters in Ibadan, but we also have hubs in West Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa, and Eastern Africa. Yeah, the key about Nigeria is without oil, can Nigeria reach the untapped potential of its agricultural sector for economic growth? I will say positively yes, because Nigeria has all what she can take to create another green revolution in this world, and this time in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. Because this has been mentioned earlier in the earlier presentations about the huge potential in terms of land, water, labor, and the internal markets because of its population. And if it can become globally competitive, then it can exploit all these to bring in the needed foreign exchange this country wants. In other words, bring Nigeria back to its glory days, in those days when people were talking about the groundnut pyramids of Kanu in the early 70s, when they were talking about cocoa in the Southwest, and so on and so forth. We do recognize that the Agricultural Transformation Program, CTA, of the federal government, which is for 2011 to 2015, is all about enhancing capacity for agricultural commodity chains of this country to function well, leading to industrialization and employment creation, food security, infrastructure investments, private sector leadership, supportive fiscal policies, and accessible market information systems to farmers. And many heads have been put together to come up with the target commodity value chains for the various regions of Nigeria, starting from the northeast, northwest, north central, on to the south, southeast, and southwest. But in all of these zones, you will realize, apart from the specificity of commodity with comparative advantage, you realize rice and cassava, livestock and fisheries, either inland or artisanal or ocean fisheries, marine fisheries, is featuring in each of the regions. This implies the importance of these commodities in Nigeria, and if Nigeria could do it well and do it right, it can become globally competitive again in the world in many of these commodities. For example, cassava. Nigeria is already the global leader of cassava. So why can't it capitalize on this leadership and make as much import substitution by using what it has to get what it wants in the case of cassava products? And where could funding come for some of these initiatives? The public-private partnership This has been mentioned most of the times these days: joint ventures, private sector investment, foreign direct investments. And the outcome of the agricultural transformation agenda is basically to create more jobs, create wealth, and improve the food security in the country. And it's basically dealing with most of the staple crops in this country. So what it's saying, it's saying Nigeria should create wealth, should produce food in ways that create wealth. That is simply what it's saying. It's not just meal on the table, but money in the pocket to do other things that the country needs. What are some of the government incentives to support investors in agriculture? Because investors tend to shy away from agricultural technologies, from investment in agricultural enterprise, which I will come to later. And the federal government has put these in place: 0% duty on agricultural machinery and equipment imports, removal of restrictions on areas of investment, no currency exchange control, constitutional guarantees against nationalization or exploitation, pioneer tax holiday for those starting new business in terms of agricultural products, infrastructural support with special focus on staple crop processes zoned for power, water, and electricity. These are all good at the federal government level, but at the subnational level, we need to do more. I'll take the case of cassava. Policy alignment, which creates the market pool. We're already global leader for cassava. What we should be doing? We should encourage our textile industries to use 30% local cassava starch with every 2 years a 10% increase. We should also encourage the confectionery industries to use up to 40% local cassava flour as composite wheat flour. The alcohol distilleries, like the one in Sangota, Allied Atlantic, should derive 80% of its ethanol from cassava importation of crude ethanol and crude ethanol progressively restricted. I now know that for the first time, Allied Atlantic has started using 100% cassava to produce its ethanol, because I was there doing the launching. So lesson learned. Before I make my statement, Nigeria has come up with many national agricultural programs in this country, starting from the farm settlement schemes in the early 60s, moving on to the 80s with the agricultural development projects and then programs, and then moving to the FADAMA, and now the agricultural transformation agenda. We should learn from the successes and failures. Why most of these national agricultural programs have not contributed fully to the expected output or outcome that we anticipated, and use these lessons to define our new national programs. One thing from a review of all those national programs is that we should always consult all the stakeholders in both the planning and implementation of such programs. If we don't, we are never going to get the full benefit from such programs in terms of what they were designed to do. So, one of the lessons learned from these national programs, execution, and private sector investment into the agricultural sector, is the supply chain. So we must ensure we come up with strategies that ensure the supply in sufficient quantities of uniform and high-quality products to markets. The supply chain is the key. In fact, the distilleries company now, Allied Atlantic, though they need about 260 tons per day of fresh cassava, going all the way to Kwara, Ondo, and Oyo State, including Ogun State, to get their raw tubers, they are only getting averagely 80 tons per day. So they are really producing below capacity. So where can they get the supply? And that's where we have to come up with strategies to develop cluster farming, increase their productivity of those cluster farms such that they will have enough raw tubers to sell to the distillery company. Then the principle of subsidiarity. Yes, we have the national program, ATA, at the national level. But I think we must start at the local level and then move on to the state level and then the federal level. And in that way, you will see the complementarity and synergism. But as the two speakers have said previously, the alignment is not there in all cases when it comes to the states, and some states have policies that are not in tune with that of the federal government fully when it comes to agricultural policy. So you can't get the maximum benefit from this. Then the third lesson is that just having a program for 4 years is not enough. The Maputo Declaration says 6% growth averagely, but Nigeria needs 7 to 10% growth to catch up to its glory days, you know. And it takes not just 4 years, it takes about 15 to 25 years to really depend on the agricultural sector to get Nigeria back to 80–90% of its GDP coming from the agricultural sector. Like Thailand, when Thailand started developing in the cassava sector, they started long time ago, just after the Vietnam War. They started investing in that sector. And now today, they are a global exporter of cassava products to China, Japan, and even United States and the European Union in terms of pellets and feedstock. So we must have deliberate, strategic, sustained set of actions for a private sector-led agricultural transformation. Otherwise, the private sector will still try to shy away because he knows that in 4 years' time, if we have another government, they may shift emphasis and so on and so forth. And the last I want to make here is there are no quick fixes for sustained economic growth for Nigeria, 7 to 10% per year, and poverty alleviation. So I want to describe 3 models that we can use related to the agricultural value chains to improve the agricultural sector in this country so that it contributes meaningfully to the GDP of this country. One is what I call the integrated commodity chain approach, for which we adopted in this country during the presidential initiative under the Obasanjo administration. And you ensure that the market is the pool by linking the farmers to factories like the Matna starch factory, the Nestle processing units, the Allied Atlantic, and so on and so forth, and the Nigeria starch mills in Iyala, Anambra State, so that they create the pool and ensure that you have all the other inputs that will drive the technology to have those market outputs which those factories will pull. So we are saying this is an integrated approach in which all stakeholders should be involved in the planning and implementation through innovation platforms, which is the new buzzword these days, in order to ensure that production is enhanced, productivity is enhanced, processing is enhanced, marketing is enhanced, and consumption, sales and consumption is enhanced by bringing all the key players who have a stake in that enterprise or value chain to make sure they all give their contribution, and then you get the desired output that is required.